Welcome to the Mind Solution podcast with Sarah Maud. The Mind Solution podcast is for leaders like you who are passionate about well-being in the workplace because you understand that a strong, resilient and happy workforce is the key to your organisation's success. The Mind Solution podcast is here to help you. So join us every week where we'll share with you powerful insights, strategies and know-how to ensure that your people and your organisation are truly thriving from the inside out. Hi there, I'm Sarah Maud. I'm the Managing Director of the Mind Solution International. Now, myself and my team have held over 10,000 one-to-one sessions with people. And what those sessions have given us is a real insight into what needs to happen in your workforce, within your organisation, to have a really tangible impact, both on the health of your people, on the health of your workforce, and also on the performance of your organisation. So I'm going to share with you some of the key insights that we've gained that will hopefully give you some food for thought and some direction. So first up is management mental health training. Now, it's wonderful to see so many more organisations that are waking up to the fact that we need to equip managers with both the knowledge, the understanding, the skills and the confidence to proactively manage mental health in the workplace. Because let's face it, mental health, it's a huge topic. And for a lot of managers, it's a really scary topic. Because managers are often scared of saying the wrong thing, of doing the wrong thing. They're scared that if they say the wrong thing, is that going to tip somebody over the edge? Is it going to make the matter worse? Are they potentially going to end up in a grievance situation? So managers have got all of these thoughts, these fears, these worries, these doubts swirling around in their mind. And the more that we can help managers by unpacking, what do we even mean by mental health? What is this label? How do we recognize when somebody's not okay? What are the red flags that managers need to be looking out for? And then when they spot the red flags, what do they actually do about it? What's their role? What's their responsibility? What boundaries do they also need to have in place so that they're not impacted on a personal level? So investing in management mental health training is crucial. You know, one of the real reasons that people leave an organisation is because of the relationship that they have with their manager. And managers, business leaders are the first point of contact. They're the ones that see people, whether in the office or virtually, on a day-to-day level. So they're the ones that are closest to the detail. And having worked with so many people on a one-to-one level, I've heard some real horror stories about how managers have managed mental health in the workplace. I remember one individual that I worked with a long time ago, and she was in this classic situation where she had a couple of vacancies in her team. And the team was only a headcount of about 5 people. But it takes time, doesn't it, to recruit the right people. And because she was trying to create that time to recruit the right people, to go through the whole interview and selection process, she was also trying to pick up the work that had been created by these vacancies. She was trying to make sure that she wasn't putting too much pressure on the people she did have on her team. And it just all got a bit too much. And she was just really struggling to cope. She was feeling quite overwhelmed. She was feeling quite stressed. Now, with my old HR hat on and the hat that I wear now, I'd said to her about talking to her line manager and just having that conversation so that the two of them could sit down and they could potentially look at, well, what can we take off the agenda? that person could help her maybe reprioritize some of the key projects in the department so that she wasn't feeling so overwhelmed. To identify what is it that she needed to have happen. You know, what support did she need? So she went forward, she had that conversation, and the response from her line manager was, well, we're all stressed, aren't we? Example of how not to manage mental health in the workplace. Now, I could go on and I could give you a lot more horror stories, and the consequences, well, that individual, she left. And she left not because she was overwhelmed, not because she couldn't cope, because she just knew that she wasn't going to get the support that she needed. So she left and she went to work for another organization, and she was an amazing individual. You know, she was really competent. She was a kind of person that would be an absolute asset to any organization. She really cared about doing a good job. But that response told her everything that she needed to know. So she handed in a resignation and she left, and she's doing amazingly well now. So absolutely investing in management mental health training. Now, what I would also caveat that with is a lot of organizations approach us and they say, we really want to invest in this management mental health training, but we're also really conscious about managers' time. And what we sometimes find with organizations is that whilst they do want to invest in the training, they want what effectively is a really big subject matter to be compressed into maybe 3 hours. In some cases, it's like, can you deliver this training in 1 hour? Now, our response to that is we're good, we're not God. Now, the topic is, it is a big one. And it's a lot of new information. And aside from giving your managers the real insight into what do we even mean by mental health, giving them the insight into some of the key mental health conditions, how to spot the signs, is also about the skills building. You know, the skills building that comes in the form of active listening skills, coaching skills. And a lot of managers have maybe not had any coaching skills training. And like any skill, it takes time. So what I would also invite you to consider when you are investing in this is how much space and time and capacity do you have to invest and to do it really well. Because what we don't want when we're investing in any kind of training is to throw jelly against the wall and hope that it sticks. So investing in a really comprehensive program so that your managers get exactly what it is that they need. What we often find as well in our management mental health training is that we know that statistically in the UK, 1 in 4 people are experiencing a challenge with their mental health at any one time. In the States, it's 1 in 5 people. So quite a lot of the time on our management mental health training, the managers are maybe also struggling with something. And for them, they might experience some real insights because what we're sharing with them is helping them to understand what's going on with themselves. So the more that we can create a very comprehensive and tailor-made program for your managers and for your organization, the more of an impact that you're going to have. So that's number 1. Number 2 is webinars. Now, we received so many requests for mental health webinars, particularly during the pandemic. And a lot of organizations saying we want to do something around mental health awareness. Now, again, the topic of mental health, it's a really, really, really big one. And so one of the questions that we ask is, if that webinar were to be a real success, a really useful investment of your time, of your energy, of your money, what's going to let you know that? And that can be a really great place for you to start by really thinking, what does success look like? Now, what I can share with you is that a one-off webinar of any kind is not going to have the impact that you want it to have. And particularly on the topic of mental health, of employee well-being. And this is for a number of reasons. Again, it's a big, big topic. And people need to hear something more than once. In fact, we actually need to hear something between 7 and 15 times to create what are called synaptic connections in the brain, for that learning to be embedded, to be embodied. So as much as you might want to do something, a one-off well-being webinar is not going to have the impact, the effect that you want. Because if we think about the topic of mental health, even if you want to just focus on some of the key conditions like stress, anxiety, depression, I could spend a minimum of 1 hour just on one topic alone. And again, what I know from having worked with so many people on a one-to-one level is they really need to understand, take anxiety. They really need to understand what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the body. They need to understand cause and effect. They need to know that they are not the only ones that feel like this. And when you've got somebody that's experiencing mental health, a lot of the time, in fact, not a lot of the time, all of the time, they will internalize that. And they will feel like they are the only ones that are experiencing this, that they can feel like they are literally losing their mind. And a big part of overcoming that insecurity is understanding. And understanding something like anxiety, well, we need to take time, we need to unpack it. You know, if we think about anxiety, you've got generalized anxiety, you've got trauma, you've got post-traumatic stress disorder, you've got OCD, you've got social anxiety, you've got the kind of anxiety that people experience around certain situations like public speaking. So it takes time to really understand what it is that anxiety is, the science behind it. So if we're trying to give people that understanding in a way that really lands with them, then a one-off well-being webinar is not going to cut it. And one thing that I saw an organisation that we worked with during the pandemic do is they actually invested in a whole series. So we did a sort of general introduction to the mind. We helped people to actually understand, what is this mind that about 95–96% of the time is controlling our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviours, our responses, our physiology. So we gave people that insight inside the mind. And then what we did is we ran individual webinars on the subject of stress, on the subject of anxiety, on the subject of depression, so that people that were either experiencing it, or maybe they had somebody in their personal life, like a spouse, a partner, a sibling that was experiencing it, they actually got a lot of value from attending those webinars so that they could understand a lot more what was going on for their loved ones, that they knew the best way to support them. So I would say that if you're going to invest in a webinar, to really think about what's needed to make that impact. So that's number 2. Number 3, mental health first aiders. Now, creating mental health first aiders is quite a new concept. And we're seeing more and more people, more and more organisations investing in mental health first aiders. Now, on the whole, a mental health first aider course can last somewhere between 2 and 4 days. Now, that is a good chunk of time, but if it's brand new information, then we need to think about, how do we keep that information alive? Bearing in mind what I said, that we need to hear something more than once. Now, I know personally, I'm a solution-focused psychotherapist, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm trained in EFT, I'm trained in MAP, I'm trained in coaching. I have spent, I'm not even going to talk in terms of hours, I am going to talk in terms of weeks, possibly possibly thinking about years, investing in my knowledge. I've got this huge bank of knowledge because over the last 11 years, I've never stopped learning. So what we need to be mindful of is putting somebody on a mental health first aider training and that being it. So if you're going to invest in mental health first aiders, what are you going to do to keep that information alive so that they keep learning? Because I know even for myself, again, if I use the example of anxiety, it's our learning's got so many levels to it. And you can understand something, but the more that you revisit it, the more that you understand it at a much deeper level. Now, we're not expecting mental first aiders to become therapists. That is absolutely not the job of mental first aiders. But what we hear from organisations that we work for is that quite a lot of mental health first aiders, if I'm really honest with you, they've almost taken on the role of a therapist. And again, I know from years and years of experience that if you are sat opposite somebody and they're sharing with you something that's quite complex, say, for example, you've got a member of staff who is worried about returning back to the office because their wife has tried to commit suicide a number of times. That's a big, big conversation. And 2, 3, 4 days of mental health first aider training is not enough to equip somebody to deal with that situation. If you've got somebody that's sharing with you that they're in a really abusive relationship with their partner, again, these are not just employees that are just saying they're a bit stressed out and they're a bit overwhelmed. But these are some of the things that our mental health first aiders are coming into contact with, that we've got people in our organisations sharing with mental health first aiders. So we need to think about, how do we keep investing in the training for mental health first aiders? But really importantly, how do we support mental health first aiders? Because I know that if I've had a whole clinic full of really quite heavy, complex cases, it can feel like a lot. It can be quite emotionally draining. And I remember one mental health first aider that I was working with on a one-to-one level, she was exhausted because at the beginning of the pandemic, she had so many people reaching out to her that she was actually struggling to do the job that she was employed to do. But she felt like she was taking their cases on her own shoulders. She felt like she had to do something along the lines of therapy. She felt like, I've got to solve this problem for the individual. I've got to fix it in some way, shape or form. So what we need to be mindful of when it comes to our mental health first aiders is that they're not turning themselves into mini therapists. We need to also make sure that we are equipping them with the skills like active listening, like solution-focused coaching, so that the person can help to signpost that individual that they're listening to wherever it is that they need to go. That they can ask them questions like, what is it that you need to have happen? What would make a real difference to you right now? What is it that would really help you right now? That they're not literally sitting opposite an employee thinking, I've got to somehow solve this problem. And again, one of the insights that we've got through our management mental health training is we've had so many people that are managers that are also trained as mental health first aiders that have breathed a sigh of relief, because as we train with managers, that we say that you're not there to solve their problems, mental health first aiders have had this real insight and gone, I don't need to solve the problem for whoever it is that I'm speaking to. And what they've found so valuable is active listening skills, are solution-focused coaching questions. So It's brilliant that we are investing in the initiative of mental health first aiders, but there's a much bigger piece that we need to consider to make sure that our mental health first aiders have still got the knowledge and that they are also protected and that they're not trying to be therapists in the workplace. So we've got management mental health training, we've got webinars, we've got mental health first aiders. Number 4, the presenting problem is never the real problem. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, again, from hours and hours spent working one-to-one with people, I know that whatever somebody initially presents to me as what seems like the presenting problem is never the real problem. So if I give you an example of a fear of public speaking. Now, I can tell you from 11 years of working with people that a fear of public speaking is rife. We actually need to invest in that alone. I've worked with countless directors, chief execs, managing directors to coach them around this subject. And it can be really debilitating for a lot of people. So it might not be classed as a mental health condition, but does it impact people's mental health? Absolutely. Now, they might present with the problem that is, I've got a fear of public speaking. And what I help people to understand is actually that's not the real problem. The real problem is what they think will happen when they speak in public. What they think are going to be the consequences if they speak in public and it doesn't go to plan, if they experience a freeze response. So by helping people to understand what's really going on, they recognize that what seems like the original problem actually isn't the problem. So when it comes to looking at your data, looking at what's going on in your workforce, it might be that, for example, that you're looking at the HR statistics and saying, okay, well, we've got a real problem here with stress in the workplace. What I would suggest is that stress in the workplace is not the real issue. The real issue is about their spare capacity. The real issue is about their own resilience levels, is about how well they're taking care of themselves, is about the relationship that they have with themselves, is about their mindset. Now, we know from working with so many people that we can help to peel back those layers. It's about, think of an onion. It's like peeling back those layers of an onion to really get to the heart of what's going on. So HR statistical data can be great to give you an initial snapshot of what's going on in your organization. But before you start thinking, we've got a real issue with stress, we've got a real issue with depression, we've got a real issue with anxiety, those are just symptomatic. They're symptomatic of something at a much deeper level. And the more that we can help people to really, again, understand themselves, understand the mind, understand the body, the more that they can learn how to navigate situations from the inside out. Because everything that you experience in life is not externally generated. It seems like that, but it's actually internally generated. Everything that you experience is based on the perceptual map and model that you carry around inside your neurophysiology. So it's a response. It's a response based on those perceptual filters. It just seems like the response is coming from something external. It seems like the response is based on the email that I've just received or the conversation that I've just had with somebody, or the amount of work that I've got piling up on my desk or my to-do list, or a change that an organization is going through. But the fact is, it's never about what's going on in the outside, always about what's going on in the inside. And that's one of the things that we really help people to understand with the organisations that we work with. In fact, it's one of the things, the principles that our employee wellbeing portal is based on, is giving that knowledge, that insight, that understanding to people. And then last but not least, which is kind of an extension of what I was just saying, that if we want to have a real impact on the well-being of our people, on the health of our workforce, we need to be teaching them more than the basics of things like drinking more water, taking a break from your laptop, going for a walk, getting some fresh air, sleep hygiene. Now, I'm not saying that those aren't important, they're absolutely important. But if we think about the fact that the unconscious mind governs about, as I said, 95, 96% of the way that you think, the way that you act, the way that you feel, the way that you behave, then it's those programs that are effectively running the show. And they're running the show until an internal shift is made at that unconscious level. So we can teach somebody about some of those fundamental well-being basics. But if you've got somebody, for example, that's a workaholic, you can teach them the basics. Does it mean that they're going to actually apply the basics? Probably not, because they've got a set of programs that are running the show. If you've got somebody who is experiencing imposter syndrome, which again, it's a very common thing. Imposter syndrome is a fear of being caught out, a fear that somebody's going to come along, tap you on the shoulder and say, actually, yeah, we recruited you, but that was a mistake. So again, if we think about the things that fundamentally impact us, it's the thoughts that we think, it's the relationship that we have with ourselves. So if we want to create those shifts, then we need to go beyond just teaching people about nutrition, hydration, sleep, and exercise. We need to really teach people about the brain, about mindset, and more importantly, how do you create a fundamental shift in mindset? How do you change the way that somebody thinks about themselves? How do you create that shift in their programming so that they start to behave differently? So if you have got somebody that's a workaholic, you know, we need to, in order to change the behavior, we need to change the structure of their brain. We need to change how it is that they're operating, their operating system. Now, again, one of the things that our wellbeing portal does is it gives people access to incredibly powerful leading edge techniques that we've been using in our one-to-ones with thousands of people with remarkable results. And people can access these resources on the wellbeing portal, and they can fundamentally change that operating system so that they start to get a different result. So those are just 5 of the key insights that we have gained from all of our work with people. I've got loads more, which we will save for another video. But if this is resonating with you, and if you want to have a real impact on the health and the well-being of your people, of your organization, then do drop us a line, info@themindsolution. Check out the website, www.themindsolution.com, and get in touch with us. My name's Sarah Maud, and I look forward to catching up with you again.